John Smoltz, and Major League Baseball Network analyst, part-time golfer, and full-time Hall of Famer joining us on the show. You can watch John on MLB Tonight, plus MLB Network, exclusively airing the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. So his former teammate Chipper Jones, Jim Thome, Vlad Guerrero, Trevor Hoffman, Jack Morris, Alan Trammell. That's Sunday beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Johnny, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Doing great.
All right, out of that group, you can draft. Who's your first draft pick? Chipper, Thome? No, you're going to take Chipper. All right, let's take Chipper out of this. So Thome, Vlad, Trevor Hoffman, Jack Morris, Alan Trammell. We're having a draft. You have first pick.
Well, I'm going to be super biased, and I'm going to go with the guy that totally impacted me, and that's Alan Trammell, in a way where I just have to be biased to what he did for me when I got drafted by the Tigers. And it didn't seem like much, at the time for him to just be a gentleman. I was a fish out of water, was scared to death. I didn't, these are all the guys that I idolized growing up, and I got drafted and put in uniform and missed rookie ball and trained with the club for a month. And he was what I call passing on the baton. He gave me an opportunity to see what a big leaguer was like. And you know what? At the end of the day, it changed me for the way I handled everybody else when I was in that position. So I'm going totally biased, super happy for Alan Trammell, classiest guy I've ever been around, and obviously now a Hall of Famer.
I just brought up Jimmy Garoppolo verbalized that he thought when he was in New England he was better than Tom Brady. Now, his belief that he was better than Tom Brady. So his mindset was, I'm better than Tom Brady. He didn't verbalize it to Brady or anybody else until recently with Bleacher Report. If I ask you back in the day, were you the best pitcher on your staff with Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine? In your mind, what would you have said?
I'd have said regular season, no. Postseason, yes. I was in awe of what both of them did, especially to see Greg come over and make us just an elite staff. But it's like the same thing in golf. You come up against certain golfers and you go, oh, geez, I can't let this guy know that he's way better than me. And you have that. As a baseball player, there's probably only a couple people in the game that can feel like they're the best. And there was no doubt in the regular season, preparation, all the things that went into it, they just seemed to be better prepared to win games. Of course, I was always the guy with stuff. But then I really believed I was the best player on the field come postseason. That was my time that I could feel that.
What'd you think of the story Daniel Ponce de Leon, the Cardinal rookie, comes back from brain surgery, throws 7 no-hit innings? That fear of the comebacker. Did you ever have one that, one that you remember? Now, obviously not one as serious as this, but what's that like, that comebacker?
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of the guys, but you never think about it until it happens, I mean, you don't go out there going, oh, I got to make sure I don't pitch this ball away so I can get hit. You don't really, if you're thinking about it, you're in trouble as a pitcher. And the moment it happens, then you realize, wow, and you have to find a way. First of all, I have all the admiration in the world for this kid, what he did. I was catching up on baseball yesterday, and I saw the line, and I just freaked out. No hits, and I think my girls were looking at me like, why is that such a big deal? And they didn't know the backstory to this young man. So that is so impressive because he dealt with the extreme. I got drilled right under the collarbone in spring training, knocked me flat on my back, hurt for a week, but nowhere does it compare to up near, the head region. And to come back and do that, that's fantastic. I can't even imagine what he went through to get to that point.
He's John Smoltz, Hall of Famer, MLB Network analyst, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Your reaction to the Brewers fans giving Josh Hader a standing ovation Saturday night?
Yeah, it's what's interesting is when, first of all, it's the reason why I don't have anything to write down and to put into space, but things that get brought back, how many years later?
Yeah, 7.
7 years later. So I remember having a conversation when this first all started with my kids going, it never goes away. Oh, yeah, it does. I said, no, it never goes away. somehow, some way, it'll be brought back. But I think 7 years later, for all the things that people have done to make mistakes, I don't think we would want to be 10 years from now going, all right, 10 years ago you did this. So I think from Milwaukee's standpoint and one of their own, they realized that this was a long time ago and that he had apologized and changed and did all the necessary things. But, wow, 7 years ago to bring it up at that time was, I know in life timing of when things come out can be on purpose.
Well, we saw that with the college basketball championship. Dante DiVincenzo, he had some tweets. In the mid-game, somebody released this on him. So there are people who are there to get you, but you have to give them ammunition to get you. And both of these players, certainly Josh Hader, did. Dodger fans getting Manny Machado should think what, big picture?
I think they should think they're the favorites. I know, one player in the middle of the lineup with the skill set that he has gives their offense the legitimacy that, let's say Arizona had last year with J.D. Martinez, and especially the second half of that last month that he went on. This is what, to me, when everyone asked me 3 months ago, that I thought this was the no-brainer. If they could work out the deal, they did. And now the Dodgers, like everybody else, if they get any kind of starting pitching and healthy starting pitching, I don't think they're done making moves. I think they're going to make another move to help their bullpen, and it might be, just getting someone like Buehler back and some Stripling back in the bullpen. But the Dodgers went out and made that move that puts them as the favorites, no doubt, especially in their division.
How do teammates deal with lack of hustle? We saw this with Gary Sanchez last night, and didn't run out a ground ball. Could have run out. But how is there a team leader who does something? The manager's going to say something. But what would you do as a teammate, or did you have a teammate who was that guy?
Yeah, I think you first wait to see how they react, whether it's in the media, whether they take ownership. That's the first step. And then, you base it on the history of the player and his ability to be accountable. So I think you can't always fire on somebody. You got to come alongside. Someone will come alongside. The manager will have a talk with them. But I liken it to just even with, talking to certain managers when these things arise, and the first thing they say is, well, he took ownership first night before, and I wait 24 hours, and then either he'll come into my office voluntarily or we'll have that conversation just as a reminder, and then it's over. And I think Bobby Cox did that better than anybody I've ever been around. I used to just cringe going, how is he taking that right now? And then he'd have a subtle conversation or a subtlety to it, and it would never happen again. I'll never forget him taking out. Now, this was about as extreme as it gets for Bobby, but when he went out to the mound, and I thought he was taking me out, and he actually took out Andrew Jones from center field. And that was the last time that ever happened with Andrew Jones. He felt that he had kind of, gone after the ball in a way that wasn't indicative of Andrew, and it never happened again. So it's part of the game where it's 162 games, and you got to, here's a man coming off an injury too. So there's a lot of variables that go into it that isn't as easy from the outside looking in when you have some, maybe they said, hey, we need you for 162. Who knows what the scenario is, but that's how it usually gets handled.
I'm looking back on your debut. You're 21 years of age. You were called up from the minors, and then you pitched against the Mets at Shea Stadium. You give up a run in the first inning. What are you thinking as a 21-year-old at Shea Stadium facing the Mets in your debut?
I tell you, it was crazy because this team wasn't very good, right? Our team, the Braves, I got called up. I was excited. There was a ton of people. I think it was Tom Seaver Day. And there was a 40-some thousand in the stands. My family was there. They brought up Leo Mazzoni, who was the AAA pitching coach at the time. I remember looking over, almost looking for him to what pitch to throw at times. And my first batter was Lenny Dykstra, and I think I hit him on a 1-2 curveball. So I hit my first batter, gave up that first run, and just felt myself after that just pitching, and went 8 innings. Yeah, 8 innings back then. That was. We're going to have this conversation in 10 years where a debut goes 3 innings, and we're going to think that's the greatest thing that ever happened in the world. But won my first game, had a few minutes afterwards to celebrate, and then had to go right to Richmond, get all my stuff, drive to Atlanta, and then hopefully check in my job for the next 20 or so years, and I was able to do that.
Did they haze you? Like after you get your first win?
No, they didn't. It was. I know, not a lot of people knew who I was, including the other side, because I remember. I remember just, this is comments players will make when, the Mets were really good, and they'll be asked, like, how did this kid come up and beat you? I think somebody said if he was any good, he would have got called up a long time ago.
Not that you remember that.
Not that I remember that. Not that I remember, specifically. But yeah. And then, my next game, I went into the 9th inning against Cincinnati in a tie game and gave up, I believe, a 3-run homer and lost that game. And then I didn't get out of the 3rd inning for 3 straight starts. So welcome to the big leagues.
I was wondering about this. If I ask Glavine and Maddox to, help promote the game, we're asking Mike Trout to somehow promote the game, so millions are going to start watching baseball. Baseball didn't need to be marketed back then, did it?
Not really, no. You were more familiar with players. Players stayed longer with teams. I mean, the biggest out-of-body experience for Glavine and Maddox was doing the Chicks Dig the Long Ball, which still kind of hurts me a little bit.
Yeah, why weren't you included in that?
I wasn't a Nike guy. I'm sure they would have gone to me because I had all the power. I mean, I was basically Mark McGuire amongst those two. And I was the only one that had homers at the time. But it was brilliant commercial. Envious, loved their ability to get outside their own skin. But, you think about it, Greg Maddux never did anything. That was the only thing he ever did. You wouldn't know him walking down the street. Even today, if you put a collection of Hall of Famers, he's going to be probably it. And it was intentional. He didn't want it, and he didn't get out in front. Glavine, same thing. We were. I remember doing some cheesy commercials, and I had to have a burrito in my mouth and be able to try and talk. And it was crazy stuff back then, but it wasn't, to your point, wasn't needed. I think today with as many great young superstar type potential guys, I think we're losing the opportunity to see these players with the injury factor and on the movement and all the different teams. You just don't see guys. Mike Trout has been with the Angels his whole career, and he's only played in 3 postseason games. I think all of this would change if he was in the postseason like we were. And certainly we had TBS, which helped, but we were in the postseason all the time, so we became kind of regular. When you do it 14 straight years in a row, it's going to be different.
Yeah, I always thought that Maddox was underrated, and a lot of that was that, he didn't have a great postseason career, but he didn't really go out of his way to, have people say nice things about him or do features on him, and he was just, if you can quietly have 350, 354, whatever it was, he did it.
He did it, and he on purpose gave horrible interviews so you would stop interviewing him. I mean, I did more interviews about Greg Maddux than he did himself, and it was when you catch on, you go, well, that's kind of brilliant. If you don't want anybody to spend 5 extra 10 minutes with you, just say, how did you get it done? I was kind of lucky, and it was terrible. It was one of the worst Hall of Fame interviewees in the history of the game, and he did it on purpose.
Well, it's like Jeter. But Jeter would at least smile.
Deflected.
Jeter would give you the impression that he gave you a great interview. There were no answers there. Maddox didn't even try to give you the impression that he really cared about you.
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh, hey, good to talk to you, and have fun the rest of the season, and we'll catch up.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me.
That's John Smoltz, Hall of Famer.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.